Welcome back to CarWow 787, where diesel lives, power roars, and the roads are ruled by steel and torque. If you love the smell of engine oil, the sound of a big block rumbling at idle, and stories from the golden age of diesel, then you're exactly where you need to be. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we dive into the most iconic engines and machines every weekend. Today, we've got a beast to talk about. One that doesn't just move freight, it moves the soul of diesel lovers worldwide. We're taking a deep dive into the Caterpillar 3408 V8 engine that's earned a reputation for being one of the most powerful, durable, and unforgettable engines ever dropped into a semi-truck or heavy-duty application. This is the engine that sparked debates at truck stops, made mechanics smile or swear, and became a legend both on and off the highway. Whether you know it as the roaring V8 with a sound like no other or the fuel-hungry monster that could outpull most straight sixes in its class, the 3408 is undeniably one of Caterpillar's boldest statements in diesel performance. Let's start with the basics. The Caterpillar 3408 is an 18-liter V8 diesel engine. That's right, 18 liters across 8 cylinders arranged in a 90-degree V configuration. In terms of bore and stroke, you're looking at 5.4 inches by 6.5 inches. Depending on the variant, the 3408 produced anywhere from 400 to 520 horsepower in its road-going applications and up to 1,650 pounds-ft of torque. But here's the kicker: it wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the feel, the sound, the drive. You didn't just operate a 3408, you experienced it. What set the 3408 apart was its configuration. Most of the diesel engines in Class 8 trucks have always been inline 6's simpler design, easier to maintain, more compact. But Caterpillar threw the rulebook out the window with this one. The V8 layout meant the engine was shorter in length but wider. That had implications for engine bay space, weight distribution, and certainly complexity. But it also meant performance characteristics that were different from the six-bangers most truckers were used to. The 3408 was built for torque delivery that came in strong and early. It pulled like a freight train even at lower RPMs. It had a throaty growl that turned heads and made ears perk up long before the truck came into view. That V8 rumble wasn't just noise, it was character. Old-school truckers still talk about the way the 3408 sounded when climbing a grade under full load. It wasn't refined, but it was real, raw, powerful. The engine was introduced in the early 1970s and quickly found its way into heavy-duty on-highway trucks, as well as industrial and marine applications. It was never meant to be a fuel sipper. It drank diesel with gusto, especially in earlier models. But what it lacked in efficiency, it made up for in sheer brute force. Operators who ran logging trucks, oilfield haulers, and oversized loads often swore by it. It had the guts to drag 100,000 pounds without flinching. Now, in terms of reliability, the 3408 was a bit of a mixed bag depending on how you looked at it and how it was used. When maintained properly and operated within its design specs, the engine could go the distance. But there were a few quirks and pain points. It had more moving parts than an inline 6. More complexity meant more opportunities for failure. Cooling was also a concern. The V8 generated more heat and needed a robust system to keep temperatures under control, especially under heavy loads and long pulls in hot climates. The early 3408s were naturally aspirated, but turbocharged variants became more common and eventually the standard. Caterpillar later introduced the 3408B and then the 3408C, with refinements that improved durability, emissions, and performance. Despite these improvements, the V8 configuration meant that working on the engine wasn't always a breeze. Access to components wasn't as simple, and the wide block made for tight fits in some chassis. But mechanics who knew the engine well could coax out incredible performance with the right tuning and care. One of the reasons this engine stands out in memory isn't just because of how it performed when it was new, but because of how it's remembered today. The 3408 was eventually phased out, replaced by more efficient inline-6 engines like the CAT 3406 series, which became a standard-bearer in the industry. But while the 3406 took over, the 3408 stayed alive in the hearts of enthusiasts. Today, you still see them at truck shows, pulling competitions, and in custom rigs where the roar of that V8 is worth every extra gallon of diesel. Another interesting part of the 3408 story is its role outside of trucking. This engine found a home in marine use, industrial power generators, mining equipment, and even military applications. It was rugged, adaptable, and powerful. That versatility added to its legend. When an engine can go from hauling freight to pushing a bulldozer to powering a boat, that says something about its engineering. For owner-operators, one of the biggest appeals of the 3408 was its rebuildability. Like most Cat engines of its era, it was designed to be rebuilt rather than replaced. You could get multiple lives out of one block with proper maintenance and overhauls. The Cat rebuild kits were comprehensive, and because the engine was mechanical, it was highly tunable. You didn't need a laptop or a dealer's diagnostic tool. All you needed was a wrench, a torque chart, and a deep understanding of diesel mechanics. Of course, there were downsides. The fuel consumption was considerable, especially by today's standards. In an era where fuel efficiency is a major concern, the 3408 is not what you'd call economical. Emissions regulations also spelled the end for this engine. It just couldn't meet the cleaner burning standards that came into effect starting in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The technology to keep it compliant would have changed the engine so much it would no longer be what it was. And so, Caterpillar retired it from on-highway use. But that's not the end of the story, because even today, decades after its prime, the 3408 still gets talked about like a classic muscle car. There's nostalgia, admiration, and respect. It's not just about numbers, it's about what the engine represents: power without compromise, simplicity in a mechanical age, the kind of engine that made you feel like a king behind the wheel. For the truckers who drove a 3408 powered rig, there was a sense of pride. It was loud, it was heavy, it was hot, but it could climb hills most trucks couldn't. It could survive punishment most engines wouldn't tolerate. If you had the skills to drive it right, it would reward you with performance that few others could touch. And if you had the skills to work on it, you were part of a special club of diesel mechanics who appreciated the art of a well-tuned V8. Today, you'll still find 3408s running in older trucks, off-road equipment, and restored showpieces. Diesel tuners and custom builders still hunt for them. Some even swap them into classic Peterbilts or Kenworths just to stand out. And when they fire it up, you can hear the difference instantly. It doesn't sound like a 3406, it doesn't sound like a Cummins, and it sure doesn't sound like anything modern. It sounds like a Caterpillar 3408 and you know it. Whether or not the 3408 was perfect isn't the point. It wasn't, but it was memorable. It pushed the boundaries of what a diesel engine could be in a truck. It gave Caterpillar a different identity, at least for a while, one that wasn't just about dozers and loaders but also about high-horsepower highway machines. We may never see a V8 diesel like the 3408 in a modern truck again. The industry has moved toward fuel economy, emissions control, and digital optimization. That's just the way of progress. But for those who remember what it was like to run one, or who still do, the 3408 remains a mechanical icon. Thanks for hanging with us today as we revisited one of the all-time diesel greats. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Caterpillar 3408, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell so you don't miss any of our weekly diesel features. Whether it's classic engine breakdowns, modern truck reviews, or mechanic tips from the road, we've got the torque, horsepower, and heart that diesel fans crave.